What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we got a top 10 ELO songs reaction, as I'm sure you know because you clicked on the video, brought to you by friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Evan David. Thank you, Evan David. Always appreciate all that you bring. Appreciate all the patrons. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out the Patreon link below, the patron link on the end screen when it hits. So if you've never watched an Evan David top 10 that he has brought to the channel, you are in for a treat because it's going to be a very thorough background on the band, on their whole history. Before we jump into these top 10 songs, I'll tell you right now up front, the music's not going to be in here. There's actually videos for almost everything that he brought. They're going to be in a link below, a Vimeo link below. Click on that if you want to watch the whole thing. I'll let you know that up front. Without further ado, I'm just going to get to reading all the facts that Evan David spent so much time putting together. Rock and roll legend has it that the initial genesis of what would eventually become the Electric Light Orchestra, or ELO for short, occurred in 1968 when Roy Wood, then guitarist, vocalist, and chief songwriter of the artistically yet quirky yet commercially successful Birmingham-based pop group known as The Move, began to envision an ambitious new band that would marry rock and roll with classic music in a way that, as Roy himself would put it a few years later in an interview with Rolling Stone, would, quote, take up where the Beatles' I Am the Walrus left off and put it on stage. Ongoing contractual and commercial obligations already incurred by The Move, however, meant that Wood's brainchild could not fully come to fruition for several years, by which time Roy's friend and fellow guitarist and songwriter Jeff Lynne, formerly the frontman of another Birmingham-based group called the Idle Race, had agreed both to join The Move and to join with Wood in co-founding this exciting new side project, whose name was inspired by the extravagant light shows used by the likes of Pink Floyd and the BBC's own Light Orchestra, all of which served to aptly evoke the exciting new musical possibilities of combining electrical instruments with classical ones. Possibilities that were initially perhaps best summed up by the very first song the group began working on, which was eventually dubbed 10358 Overture, and whose creation was described by Wood as follows. We'd recently bought a Chinese cello, and it sounded great. I was messing about just for a laugh. You know, I was playing all these Jimi Hendrix riffs on the cello. Jeff said, oh, I like the sound of that. I went in and did about 15 of them, and that's how ELO was born, really. This groundbreaking tune would lead off the new group's radically inventive self-titled first album, which was released in the UK in 1971, but which was also infamously dubbed No Answer in the US due to a mix-up transatlantic phone call with the band's American record label, and was also later issued as their first single to boot, becoming a UK top 10 hit in 1972. By that time, the fledgling group had also made their live debut as the Electric Light Orchestra on the 16th of April 1972 at the Greyhound Pub in Surrey, but were sadly already suffering from teething technical difficulties when performing live due to the initial on-stage imbalance between the levels of volume that could be reached by the band's non-electrical instruments and those usually created by their electrical ones on stage, which, yes, would be an incredible challenge, especially in smaller venues when you're just starting out, right? On top of all this, moreover, came steadily increasing levels of leadership tension, both on and off stage, between ELO's two main original co-founders, Lynne and Wood. Tensions which would not fully be resolved until Wood finally left to form yet another new group, the more glam rock-based Wizard, in July 1972. Having thus seemingly put paid to both their technical and their leadership issues, the first with the acquisition of new sound pickups that considerably increased the onstage volume of the band's stringed instruments, and the second with Wood's departure, the new Lynne-led lineup of ELO, whose other key members by now included both ex-Move drummer Bev Bevan, as well as bassist and later keyboard synthesizer player Richard Tandy, amidst a constantly rotating string of other talented musicians, were at last in a position to finally live up to their undoubted and seemingly limitless musical potential, and in the process create what at least one anonymous observer who wrote into NME called, quote, the most refreshing music you've ever heard since the Beatles. And Evan David adds on that part, indeed, such comparisons between ELO and the Fab Four have become increasingly commonplace over the years, with even John Lennon himself once memorably dubbing them Son of Beatles. Between 1972 and the end of their first incarnation in 1986, ELO would release a further 11 studio albums, including one soundtrack album, in the wake of their aforementioned debut, two of which, namely Discovery and Time, would top the UK album charts in 79 and 81 respectively, with the highlight nevertheless perhaps coming in 1977 with the release of their majestic magnum opus, the double album Out of the Blue, aka the one with Mr. Sky, Blue Sky on it. At the same time, moreover, the band would go also slowly evolve from its more classical progressive early leanings to also incorporate more chart-friendly musical styles such as disco and synth pop into the unique ELO mix along the way as required. As Jeff Lynne once put it, You got rock and roll. You got your rock and roll, your harmonies, your classical bits. Stick them all together. What have you got? ELO. The undoubted popular success of this truly electrifying musical formula would soon become clear, as not only did ELO sell over 50 million records worldwide during their initial 13-year plus active recording and touring career, but they'd also accumulate more combined UK and US top 40 hits than any other band in the world during the same period. That's crazy, right? Albeit while also garnering the slightly less desirable record for having the most Billboard Hot 100 Top 40 hits without a #1 single of any band in U.S. chart history. Wow. Despite all this well-deserved success, however, further tensions gradually began to emerge when Jeff Lynne in particular grew steadily wary with touring the band's at times highly elaborate stage show, which at one point included the use of a giant replica spaceship in the shape of ELO's famous jukebox logo to bring the band on and off stage. As Lynne himself once put it, I was forced to do things I didn't want to do, just because of signing bits of paper when you don't know what you're doing. You can have 50 quid and all the brown ale you can drink. You don't realize what you're getting into. So I turned it out that I had to do another 93 albums for ELO. Elsewhere, meanwhile, others amongst the band's key personnel were also getting restless with Lynne's increasingly almost one-man band style of producing and recording ELO's music, albeit often alongside his main collaborator, the almost equally versatile Richard Tandy. As Bev Bevan once put it, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, after all, sometimes the control that Jeff exerts over everything and everyone can really stifle your creative juices. I hate it when I'm being relegated to being a session drummer with the band. Hell, I've been with the group for more than 10 years, and sometimes I want to say, hey, let me do what I want. The situation finally came to a head in 1986 after the release of ELO's 11th full studio album, Balance of Power, an event which eventually finally freed Lynne of his existing obligations with ELO, and whose significance he later described as follows. Quote, I had a contract where I had to deliver so many albums to the end of ELO. I finished the last one and I realized that's it. We can disband it. I'm not being nasty or anything, but I just had enough of it by then. It was a constant thing of doing the same thing over and over, which is something I've never been fond of doing. Being on tour and doing it for 4 months, wherever it was, and then finishing it, it was just, I can't think of tunes when I'm on the road or anything like that. I'd rather be doing tunes. As such, it's perhaps unsurprising that Lynne indeed decided at this point to take an, at first, unofficial hiatus from his duties with ELO for what ultimately turned out to be the next 15 years or so, during which time he released one solo album in his own right, but often preferred to take a producer's role on other albums instead of many of whom had been musical heroes of his as a young man growing up in Birmingham. As one of those self-same performers, Tom Petty, later put it, if you wanted to find his 3 biggest musical influences, I think they'd be Del Shannon, Roy Orbison, and the Beatles, and maybe in that order. The artistic and commercial results of Lynne's work on these records were often fabulous, and was most clearly the case during a particularly purple patch of his production between 1987 and 1991, when Lynne not only produced splendid albums from George Harrison, Roy Orbison, and Tom Petty, but also joined the aforementioned other 3 alongside no less a figure than Bob Dylan to form perhaps the most illustrious and certainly the most beloved supergroup of the 80s, if not all time, namely the Traveling Wilburys, with whom he recorded a further 2 albums to boot. Not only that, but Lynne would also later follow up these already impressive achievements in even more fabulous fashion by successfully stepping into perhaps the biggest shoes of all as a producer when he reunited with Harrison to produce the Beatles' 2 mid-90s reunion singles, Free as a Bird and Real Love, following Sir George Martin's decision to decline his old producer's role due to his own partial hearing loss. And if you don't know anything about the Beatles, just search Beatles on this channel. We have about 70 videos up, including 9 on Anthology, which is what he's talking about there. We have a song battle between Free as a Bird and Real, all that good stuff. And I know we're going to have a Traveling Wilburys at some point. I think their debut album brought to us by Evan David, but that's not up yet. In the meantime, however, the remaining members of ELO had not been idle either, for as Bev Bevan himself later put it, I wanted to carry on, and so did all the other guys in the band, with the possible exception of Richard Tandy. They were going, yeah, this is great, let's tour some more, but Jeff didn't want to know about ELO. He wasn't very keen on me taking out ELO and calling it ELO. I felt a bit strange about doing that anyway. I thought people would expect Jeff to be there. That's when we came up with the Electric Light Orchestra Part 2. Thus, under Bev's leadership from 89 onwards, the newly dubbed ELO Part 2 duly recorded 2 more albums under its own name and in the ensuing 10 years, while also touring extensively to boot, before Bev in turn elected to lead the band and sell his rights to the ELO name to none other than Jeff Lynne in 1999. Lynne duly began recording a new album under the ELO name, which came out as Zoom in 2001, albeit with somewhat commercially disappointing result. but thankfully managed to eclipse his false restart over a decade later following a triumphant return to the stage alongside Richard Tandy at the Radio 2 Proms in the Park Festival in Hyde Park, London in 2014. Billed as Jeff Lynne's ELO, under this guise he has also since made memorable appearances at both the Glastonbury Festival and the itself rebuilt Wembley Arena, as well as touring more widely to boot. Moreover, in the intervening years, Lynne has also released a further 2 albums under that name, Alone in the Universe and From Out of Nowhere, the latter of which finally returned the ELO name to the top of the UK album charts in 2019. As a result of this, both Lynne himself and ELO in general, whose lush, life-affirming music had far too often been disparagingly seen as something of an archetypal guilty pleasure of sorts in the years following the original band's demise, have since finally been given the level of latter-day critical respect that matched their prior ongoing commercial success, a process which had also been reinforced by the near constant use of the band's most famous tunes, and Mr. Blue Sky in particular, in countless movie and TV soundtracks over the intervening years. As music journalist Simon Price put it in 2014, ELO were, quote, arguably the most uncool, even defiantly anti-cool of the lot, and have been the slowest to be rehabilitated since. They've been sampled by dozens upon dozens of acts, from Company Flow to the Pussycat Dolls, if you go looking. Every now and then in my journalistic career, it's been possible to coax a contemporary band to admit to an ELO influence. The Flaming Lips and Super Furry Animals being 2 examples. Hey man, we got album reactions of those guys up too. But the band in whom I perceive the greatest amount of ELO DNA are outside the rock genre altogether, namely Daft Punk. We just put a reaction to them up. Perhaps the final word on all this should go to Jeff Lynne himself, Evan David says, however, who said at the time that, quote, it's amazing, it's great to be cool, I've never ever been cool, so for people to think it's cool now is absolutely wonderful. I've thought we were cool all along, but I love it to bits to finally get the recognition from the high end of rock and roll, the music critics and people like that. It's a totally unexpected thing for me. I don't know why this is happening, but it feels great to go out there and have such warmth from an audience. Some of these songs have been around for 40 years, and they're just going on. Evan David says in closing, indeed, it's a superlative strength of ELO's stellar back catalog, of which has made the task of narrowing down precisely which electrifying tune should feature in this top 10 so very difficult, but at the same time, so very enjoyable. And I'm acutely aware that my final choices may not please everyone, especially given the fact that my consistently recurring wish in drawing up these top 10 lists for our TTC, i.e. to provide a fun mix of big hits and more obscure personal favorites for the guys to react to, hopefully positively. It's always been positive so far. Has meant in this case that perhaps too many of the band's most famous and popular tunes have inevitably had to be left by the wayside, for which I can only plead for forgiveness from fellow ELO fans out there in the existing RTTC community and beyond. Nevertheless, Evan David says, I sincerely hope that you all still enjoy the list, and even if you don't, please do feel free to leave your own alternative ELO top 10 lists in the comments below. As I'll say, it is very hard to make one of these lists, right? It is painful. We do have a little bit of ELO on the channel. I mean, I'm aware of them. I know a little bit from them. I come across them all the time. I come across Jeff Lynne all the time since he's mixed in with so many other guys. If you want to check it out later, for ELO, we got a song reaction to Twilight, and we got a New World Record full album reaction up. So those are the things we got to. Let's jump into this list. At number 10, we got Roll Over Beethoven. Originally taken from ELO's second studio album, the imaginatively named ELO 2 in 1973, and also reaching number 6 in the UK, 42 in the US, this irreverent, intoxicating matchup of a beloved and already much covered Chuck Berry tune with the even more renowned Fifth Symphony of the classical composer name checked in its title not only served as a highly effective mission statement of ELO's earliest ambitions to create such crossover tunes, but also, as ELO expert Barry Dell puts it, it definitely showed the record-buying public, and the critics especially, that ELO weren't going to take themselves too seriously, and neither should anyone else. An impression that is firmly reinforced by the clip that we're about to watch of the band performing the single version of this tune live on the Midnight Special TV show in August of 1973, Evan David says, in some decidedly outlandish costumes. Let's check it out. Roll Over Beethoven. They did a great job of implementing the stringed instruments with the traditional rock and roll, because I really like watching videos in these videos that Evan David does, but one of the drawbacks to it is, especially I think with the group of ELO that has the finite production, is live performance, you sometimes don't get the same feel, right, that you're going to get in the studio. So that's always kind of a little bit dicey with these groups. I think they did a great job there. I'll be kind here and say that Jeff's voice is definitely not meant for this song. Just way too big of a song for him. He did what he could. All props to Jeff. But yeah, this song not suited to him, and it's hard because some legends have done this song with Chuck and obviously Lennon, who have that voice. But a good introduction here for me to seeing the live performance. They really put it on, had a lot of energy. Let's go to the next track. Next up at number 9, you actually see it below. It's going to be a Spotify track, The Way Life's Meant to Be, originally taken from ELO's ninth studio album, the sci-fi concept album Time in 1981. This highly poignant Phil Spector meets Doctor Who Spanish-infused tune has the unfortunate distinction of being the first ELO single not to chart at all in the UK for over 5 years when it was first released a year later in 1982. A real shame indeed, as this wistfully understated tune in fact reminds me a lot of not only the time-traveling doctor's exploits, but also the Welsh concept of, I don't know how to pronounce it right, Hireth, which has itself been defined as a blend of homesickness, nostalgia, and longing, a pull in the heart that conveys a distinct feeling of something irretrievably lost, a unique blend of place, time, and people that can never be recreated. This unreachable nature adds an element of grief, but somehow it is not entirely unwelcome. Indeed, Evan David says this profound sense of an impossible longing to return to someone, somewhere, or even someone that was highly significant to you, but has since either disappeared or changed so much as to feel out almost physically out of reach, or indeed may never even existed in the first place, is perhaps even more relevant than usual in this case, given this album's groundbreaking use of time travel as its central underpinning idea. All right, let's check it out. The Way Life's Meant to Be. So I have the lyrics up over here on another computer, but then I just finally brought them up on here. That's why I keep just looking a little bit, because almost everything's a video. I watched the vid, but I want to see the lyrics just a little bit, so I had to get out of that habit in that one. But I like this one a lot better than the last track. And I was kind of reading like the concept of the album. All of you, the ELO fans, know this, but they're in the year 2095. He even gave a shout out to one to go back to 1985. But obviously the production, it sounded much crisper. Jeff sounded a lot better, but just a really good song, nicely layered in the production. Now we'll be going back over to a video. Number 8 songs, I'm Alive. Evan David says originally taken from the soundtrack album to the 1980 film Xanadu, for which ELO contributed half of the songs and released as a single in its own right in May of that year, reaching 20 in the UK and 16 in the US. The movie itself may have been a notorious box office flop at the time. I remember it definitely was. I was only 9 years old, but my mom went and saw it. I passed. But on first viewing it a couple years back, I found it to be a lot more fun than it's usually painted, mostly thanks, it must be said, to the inclusion of the aforementioned ELO tunes, and this one in particular. Literally life-affirming, this infectious, joyful tune always leaves me with a fist-pumping smile on my face whenever I hear it. I'd like you to react to the version of I'm Alive as featuring the opening sequence of the Xanadu movie itself, so that's what we're doing. Let's check it out. Okay, I'm Alive. So I kept having to look away from the video, right? Because the video is so distracting. I thought the video was actually horrible, but that's just me, man. I mean, I don't mind looking at Owen J. She was beautiful back then. I mean, she still is now, but it was just so weird, right? And then so you find yourself like your brain can only process so much. I'm trying to focus on the music, and then the videos just so you're just going, what in the world is going on here? So a good song. I like the vibe of it. I mean, I get the production of it. It does work perfectly for a movie like this. It sounds like just a fun little tune. Now up to the 7th track, Poker. Originally taken from ELO's 5th album, Face the Music, in 1975, this relatively obscure but still rollicking sonic roller coaster of a card-themed tune quickly hits you in the face with all the full force of one of the explosive playing cards used by Gambit of X-Men fame, thus becoming, as Barry Delve once again put, the hardest and dirtiest rocker in the ELO catalog. All of the band play their cards right, but the real ace in the pack here is Richard Tandy, whose sterling keyboard work gives a real sense of menace and urgency, guaranteed to get the crowd up on their feet. Also of note is the contribution of one of ELO's best and most long-serving key support players, bassist Kelly Grosset. I think that's how he says his name, Grosset it could be, who usually also provided excelling backing vocals harmonies for Jeff Lynne, but who on this occasion takes the lead vocal instead, with jackpot results, as you can hopefully see from this clip, of the band performing this tune at the New Victoria Theatre, London, in June of '76, which was later released as part of their concert film Fusion, and once again shows the whole band in top form. Let's do it. Poker, my favorite track so far, I talked about on the heavy guitar ridden, and all Richard's doing the lead vocals. I mean, Jeff's in there harmonizing with him on almost every line, so I really did enjoy that too. I thought the harmonies were great because those lyrics, especially at the start, were fast, man. They were really quick delivered. So this shows me a different side of ELO, and yeah, man, this one was definitely a winner for me. Now up to number 6, Do Ya. Originally taken from ELO's 6th album, A New World Record, in 1976, reaching 24 in the U.S. Billboard singles charts upon its release there in January of '77. This perennial arch rocker of a tune, in fact, already had something of a checkered history all its own by that point. First penned by Jeff Lynne during the latter stages of the Moves' career in 1971, it originally served as that band's biggest hit, and indeed, only U.S. Billboard hit, reaching 93 in June of 72. As such, ELO later began to play in concert as the only Move era tune in their live set. But confusion swiftly arose due to the fact that Todd Rundgren had also issued his own live cover of Do Ya with his then band Utopia in the meantime, with the result, to quote Bev, I did a radio interview in the Midwest or somewhere, and the guy said, I saw the concert last night. I noticed that you do Ya. Are you a Todd Rundgren fan? So I thought, oh, well, that just about does it. So I told Jeff, and he said, right, let's redo it and just let everybody know once and for all, we were the originators of it. They're performing it here during their record-breaking 8-night concert tour at the then newly renamed Wembley Arena in London in June of 78. Do Ya, appropriately either the end of the regular set or their end of their encore. Just great energy in that one. I talked about it during the reaction. The guitar riff was infectious. The chorus was infectious. Most catchy song that we've got so far. Great live performance. Jeff sounded excellent. The band was firing on all cylinders. You could feel the energy of the crowd even though you couldn't see them. So really, really good tune there. We're already to the top half of Evan David's ELO Top 10. All right, we're to the top half of this list. Don't Bring Me Down at number 5, originally from ELO's 8th studio album Discovery from 1979, reaches number 3 and 4 respectively in the UK and US charts when released in August of that year, thus becoming the band's biggest hit stateside. Jeff Lynne himself memorably described this hypnotically dance-compelling disco-infused tune as, quote, a great galloping ball of distortion. I wrote it at the last minute because I felt there weren't enough loud ones on the album. This was just what I was after. In fact, the studio version of this tune was notoriously the first ELO tune not to have any string section on it, being based instead around a slowed-down tape loop of Bev's bulldozing drum track from a previous tune on the same album, namely On the Run, with Lynne himself performing all the other instruments on it to boot. What this song is perhaps most notorious for, however, is oft misheard lyrics, as during the bits when Lynne apparently sings Don't Bring Me Down, Bruce, he's in fact originally sang something quite different. For as Lynne himself later put it, there was a gap in the vocals. I just shouted out gross. It was a word that came to my head. The engineer said that it meant greetings in German, which I thought was lovely, and decided to leave it in. Of course, everyone else just thought he was singing Bruce anyway, including delighted concert audiences like this one, shown in the video of the aforementioned revival of Lynne's ELO performing this tune at Hyde Park in 2014. So we're skipping ahead quite a bit performance-wise. Don't Bring Me Down, a song I definitely knew. I didn't know ELO sang it, but I mean, I was only 8 years old when it came out, but definitely knew that one. Jeff sounded good. I mean, it's what you get in 2014. A lot of good backing vocals to help punch up the voice. The performance was still really good. It looked like a crazy scene there. So it was really cool to see that. And also, it's a song you'd like to play to several people you've had in your life, right? Don't bring me down, man. Just get out of here. So that was number 5. Now we're actually going back over to Spotify. Rock and Roll is King, originally from ELO's 10th and penultimate studio album, Secret Messages from 1983, reaching number 13 and 19 in the UK and the US, respectively, after its release in June of that year. This reaffirmation, if there were any still needed, of the sheer levelness of fun with a capital F that can be had whenever Jeff Lynne channels the Chuck Berry soundbook, has since tended to be dismissed by some critics as being somewhat lightweight by ELO's more lofty musical standards, but I, for one, have always loved it, especially the clanging guitar sounds that originate from this tune's earliest drafts, as something to do with the motor industry, but which have since become one of the most rousing clarion calls to feel that jumping beat and a get up on your feet that you're likely to hear. Rock and Roll is King. Much better sounding on that one for Jeff, trying to channel his inner Chuck. Lyrics or shout outs to some of Chuck's older songs. Just a really fun tune, as Evan David said. A lot of energy in this one, more so than some of the other tunes, because that's not what they're trying to do there. But very catchy, very energetic, good guitar work. Enjoyed that one. Well, we're up to number 3. We got Wild West Hero. You see it below. Originally taken from ELO's 7th studio album, and in my view, at least, their best, Evan David says, Out of the Blue from 1977. Ultimately reaching number 6 in the UK after being released there in May of 78. This beautifully poignant shout out to the glories of what they used to call those thrilling days of yesteryear in the Old West, or at least the Hollywood version of it, serves as a strong reminder of the strong cultural grip that Western films, TV shows, and books, comics once had on so many British children, in particular of Jeff Lynne's generation and earlier, for whom it seemed like an exciting, exotic El Dorado of wild adventure and fun, including Evan David's own late dad, who passed on his lifelong love of said Westerns to Evan David. Now, my dad was never much of a music fan as far as I know, but I have a sneaking suspicion he'd have enjoyed this one with its killer combination of Bev's powerhouse drumming mixed with both Lynne's honky-tonk guitar solos, a string section going full pelt, Lone Ranger theme style, and above all, some of the best harmonies ELO ever came up with. Well, that's a big compliment. To create what has been dubbed by some as a Hey Jude on horseback. Whenever I hear this wistfully brilliant tune, or indeed watch its official promo video, which we're going to watch, but it's now blocked, Evan David thinks of his dad and smiles. That's a cool story right there. Wild West Hero, wow. That song's production was outstanding. There's a treatment on Jeff's voice on the first part of it. First part of it was so good. It definitely sounded Beatle-esque, that first part. Then you had some transition music, just a little instrumental. There was almost like a saloon type music. And then second verse, and then we get into another little transition, and then the outro. But he's trying to escape his life, right? He's just saying, man, I wish I could be a Wild West hero, and all the things he would do in that. He'd ride the range all day till the fading light, be with this Western girl around the fire oh so bright. I'd be the Indian's friend, let them live to be free, riding into the sunset. I wish I could be. So that escapism that we all try to get to in some form or fashion, whatever your dream is, that was Jeff. So that was a really good tune. Now we're up to number 2. It's Twilight, once again taken from 1981's Time album, which has been called the most influential ELO album of all time, reaching number 30 and 38 in the UK and US singles charts, respectively, in October and November of that year. This outlandishly fantastic tune and conceptual cornerstone of the album, as Barry Dell so poetically puts it, unleashes itself from the speakers, grabs you by the ears, and like a sonic sci-fi orgasm, takes you on one of the most exciting experiences ELO ever gave you. Powered by the mighty drums of Bev, Twilight is relentlessly big, bold, and brash. The classical influences are still there, but this is ELO reinvented for the Blade Runner age. Can't say any fairer than that, yes. Evan Davis says, of course, you guys have already reacted to the audio-only version of Twilight many moons ago, so I really wanted as ever to give you something different to react to this time around instead. A suitably sci-fi solution presented itself in the shape of something that was actually recommended to you in many of the comments to that earlier reaction, albeit not in mine as I hadn't seen it yet, namely the equally highly influential opening sequence of the pioneering 1983 Japanese sci-fi anime convention Daikon 4, which is created by a dozen or so student animators with as much painstaking love and attention to detail as Jeff Lynne lavishes upon his best tunes, and which, more to the point, used Twilight as its unofficial soundtrack. Plus, as a bonus, this version also includes the much requested opening prologue to Twilight, which wasn't included in your first reaction to boot. You had all the comments like, you should have listened to the prologue. So here we go. Twilight. Okay, kind of like some of the other tracks. I had to look down and look away for a little bit because I was trying to focus on the music, and with all that stimulation with the anime, it was hard to focus on the music. I mean, we did react to the song, but I've never listened to it since. It was the first time I reacted to it. So definitely a more intricate song, obviously more spacey. What if we got a little copy written there as we had Darth Vader and the Death Star and the Stormtroopers in there? But towards the end of the video and the subtitles, it had all the lyrics, right? But then it said, I can't remember what it said, Holy Ravioli or something. This was made by college students. I can't believe it. But a really intricate song. Really did like it. I guess the intro, the prologue added something to us. I mean, everybody wanted us to listen to it. I mean, it's fine. I don't know how much it added to it for me, but a really good choice for number 2. And I'm sure most ELO fans will agree. Well, we're here. We're at number 1, and probably most of you know what it is. It's Mr. Blue Sky. Evan David said, well, what else could it be, after all, when no one less of an authority on high-quality songwriting than Sir Paul freaking McCartney himself says that Mr. Blue Sky is a pretty special song. It's probably the one that everyone would choose, so it's a bit boring to choose it, but it's great. I mean, it just works. And if you're in the car and it's a nice day, it really works, and you have no choice than to listen, yes? The song itself is once again taken from 1977's Out of the Blue and originally formed the end piece of this majestic double album's Concerto for a Rainy Day section, aka side 3, before also being released as a single in 1978, where it peaked at 6 in the UK, only 35 in the US. Yet such bare statistics can hardly communicate the overwhelmingly positive impact of this glorious tune over the decades since its release, for not only has it been featured in countless movies and TV soundtracks during that time, not to mention the opening and closing of the London 2012 Olympics to boot, but it has also more recently been proclaimed by both scientific studies as well as by the larger public as officially being the happiest song ever made, while Jeff Lynne himself has also proclaimed that it, quote, captured all of what ELO, my vision of ELO, was about. Everything is exactly what I imagine ELO to be. Small wonder then that this genuinely smile-inducing masterpiece of a tune, which Lynne had first come up with after being inspired by experiencing a brilliantly sunny day in the Swiss mountains, which itself followed a period of both really bad weather and almost equally bad case of writer's block on his part, has since evolved to the point that, as Barry Delve once more puts it, Mr. Blue Sky is ELO. No matter how many times you listen to it, each time you hear it, you can't imagine anything better. Everything comes together in a package of glorious optimism to create the ultimate ELO song. Mr. Blue Sky is one of those rare songs that transcends generations, and thanks to its ubiquity, has entered into popular culture. People know it, even if they don't know who it's by. It's not ELO songs anymore, it's everyone's. And then Evan David said this sense of genuine public love for this glorious song can perhaps best be evoked by watching this literally crowd-pleasing performance of Jeff Lynne's ELO at Hyde Park performance in 2014. All right, guys, number one, let's check it out. Okay, the iconic Mr. Blue, Evan David's number one on his ELO top 10. I will tell you what, man, that performance was fantastic, right? That's the way you do it up, man. Grand, high dollar performance. Everybody on the stage, everybody pumping up the lyrics, just fantastic. Everyone's into it. In the verses, a little bit of it, the sun is shining in the sky, then a cloud in sight, it stopped raining, everybody's in the play, and you don't know, it's a beautiful new day, hey, running down the avenue, see how the sun shines brightly in the city, on the streets where once was pity, Mr. Blue Sky is living here, hey. And then the chorus, Mr. Blue Sky, please tell us why you had to hide away for so long, where did we go wrong? Mr. Blue Sky, please tell us why you had to hide away for so long, where did you go? So, the happiest song ever, according to Evan David and all the studies that he said. So I don't know if it's the happiest song ever, but it's a fantastic one. Now, before we get to my favorite tracks, we're going to get to Evan David's. He said his honorable mentions, of which there are a ton this time. 10538 Overture, Daybreaker, Ma Ma Ma, Bell, In the Hall of the Mountain King, Everyone's Born to Die, Evil Woman, Down Hometown, Strange Magic, Living Thing, Telephone Line, know that song well, Turn to Stone, Sweet Talking Woman, Across the Border, Sweet as the Night, Shine a Little Love, Last Train to London, All Over the World, and especially Summer and Lightning, Hold On Tight, So Serious, and Can't Get It Out of My Head, and Rockaria. So, I didn't know a lot of ELO coming into this, really did enjoy this. My honorable mentions are Don't Bring Me Down, and my faves are Poker, Do Ya, Wild West Hero, and of course, Mr. Blue Sky. So a fantastic list. Remember, Evan David said he's going to have the most popular ones and then some little kind of hidden ones. So he didn't go with the quote top 10 most famous or anything like that. So let us know what you think below. Let us know what your favorites are. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out the Patreon link on the end screen. And once again, guys, appreciate it. Until next time, I will see you.